It's a Tuesday lunch break, and someone's sitting in their car in a shopping centre car park scrolling through their super app. Not because anything happened, just out of a weird nervous habit. They do this every few months, and every time they see the balance, they feel the exact same thing, a small stomach drop, because they have absolutely no idea if that number is good, bad, or completely average for someone their age. They close the app, they open it again 10 minutes later, like the number might have changed, and today we're fixing that. Because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you should be sitting at every age if you want a genuinely comfortable retirement, and how to close the gap if you're not there yet. Here's the reframe most Australians never get. Most people compare their super balance to their mates or to some vague headline they half remember from the news, but there's an actual benchmark built specifically for this, and almost nobody's ever seen it laid out clearly, which means most people are either panicking over nothing or feeling falsely comfortable when they're actually behind. And both of those situations are equally dangerous, because one leads to needless stress and the other leads to a nasty surprise at 60.
So let's build the framework first, because the numbers only make sense once you understand how they're calculated. The benchmark figures used by industry researchers assume you want to retire around 67 with a comfortable lifestyle, which sits around $54,000 a year for a single person or around $77,000 for a couple. These targets assume you own your home outright by retirement, and that your super works alongside a partial age pension for many people, not a full replacement of it. The benchmark also assumes steady contributions across your working life. Not perfect ones, just steady. And it assumes a long-term investment return that outpaces inflation, which is realistic for a diversified super fund over multiple decades. It's not a guess dressed up as a number, it's a calculation built backwards from an actual lifestyle target. So let's run the numbers by age, because this is where people either breathe a sigh of relief or sit up a little straighter. At 30, the benchmark for being on track sits around $60,000. That number feels small compared to the final target, but remember, compounding hasn't done its heavy lifting yet. At this stage, this is genuinely the stage where your balance looks unimpressive, no matter how well you're doing, because the growth curve hasn't bent upward yet. By 40, the benchmark climbs to roughly $180,000, which reflects a decade of contributions plus growth starting to build real momentum. This is usually the age where people first notice their balance moving meaningfully between statements, rather than crawling. By 50, you should be sitting around $350,000 to $400,000, which is the stage where compounding genuinely starts accelerating faster than your own contributions do, meaning the market is doing more of the work than your pay packet is.
And by 60, the benchmark for a comfortable retirement sits around $595,000 for someone retiring solo, or a combined $690,000 for a couple, which is designed to work alongside the age pension to fund that $54,000 to $77,000 a year lifestyle. Now, if you just heard your age bracket and felt your stomach drop, take a breath, because this is exactly the moment most people either spiral or get serious. And spiraling doesn't help you catch up. Seriousness does. The whole point of hearing a number you don't like is that you now know something you didn't know an hour ago, and that's genuinely useful, even when it stings a little. Here's the first thing worth knowing about these numbers. They're not a cliff edge. They're a guideline. Being under the benchmark at 40 doesn't mean you're doomed. It means you have a longer runway than someone who discovers this at 55. And the earlier you know your real number, the cheaper it is to close the gap. A gap at 30 might cost you an extra $50 a fortnight to close. The same gap discovered at 50 might need $300 or $400 a fortnight, because there's simply less time left for compounding to help carry the load.
So let's talk about the actual levers that move this number, because there are really only a handful that matter. The first is your contribution rate. The compulsory employer contribution currently sits at 12% of your salary, but you can add to that through salary sacrifice, which reduces your taxable income while boosting your super at the same time. An extra $50 a fortnight sounds small, but starting that in your 30s can add tens of thousands of dollars by retirement, purely from decades of compounding. And if you can stretch that to $100 a fortnight, the gap it closes becomes even more dramatic. Because you're not just adding contributions, you're adding contributions that then compound for the remaining decades of your working life. The second lever is fees, and this one gets ignored constantly because it's boring. But a fund charging 1.5% in fees versus a fund charging 0.5% doesn't sound like a big gap until you realise that difference compounds over 30 plus years and can quietly cost you six figures by the time you retire. Checking your fees takes 10 minutes and could be worth more than any pay rise you'll get this decade. Most people have never once looked at the fee percentage on their super statement, even though it's sitting right there in black and white every single year.
The third lever is consolidation. A huge number of Australians have multiple super accounts sitting scattered across old jobs, each one quietly charging fees and often insurance premiums on a balance that isn't growing properly because it's split into pieces. Consolidating into one well-performing fund is one of the fastest wins available, and it costs nothing to check. The only thing worth double-checking before you consolidate is whether any of those old accounts carry insurance cover you actually still want to keep. But for most people, this is a straightforward 5-minute fix with a genuinely outsized payoff. The fourth lever is investment option. Most people are defaulted into a balanced option when they first start a job and never touch it again. For someone in their 20s or 30s, decades away from retirement, a growth option historically delivers stronger long-term returns because there's time to ride out the shorter-term ups and downs. This one decision, sitting unexamined in the background for years, can be worth more than any conscious saving decision you make. And it's a decision most people made accidentally, simply by never logging in and choosing anything at all.
Now, here's the psychological trap worth naming directly. The average super balance in Australia is often reported in headlines, and it's tempting to compare yourself to that number. But the average balance and the target balance are two completely different things. The average includes people who took large career breaks, people who never checked their fund, people who paid excessive fees for decades without knowing it, and people who were in and out of casual work with gaps in contributions. Comparing yourself to the average is comparing yourself to a number dragged down by people who never optimized anything. The benchmark, not the average, is the number that actually tells you something useful about your own trajectory. If you're behind where you'd like to be, here's the honest version of what closing the gap looks like. It's really one dramatic move. It's usually 3 or 4 small structural changes stacked together. Increasing your contribution rate by even 2 or 3%, consolidating scattered accounts, switching from a high fee fund to a low fee one, and moving to an appropriate investment option for your age. Those 4 changes together can move your retirement outcome more than almost any single decision you could make with your take-home pay. And the best part is none of them require you to earn more money. They just require you to redirect and optimise what's already flowing into your fund.
Let's go back to that car park for a second. Because here's what's different about checking your super balance once you actually know the benchmark. It's not a random number that makes your stomach drop anymore. It's information you can act on. You can look at your age, you can look at your number, and you can know exactly which lever to pull first instead of closing the app and opening it again, hoping the feeling changes. You can actually do something with what you see. So here's the real takeaway. Find your age bracket, compare it honestly to the benchmark, and then check the 4 things that actually move the needle: contribution rate, fees, consolidation, and investment option. It's not exciting, it's not going to trend anywhere, but running through that checklist once every year is genuinely how ordinary Australians end up with a comfortable retirement instead of a stressful one.
If this helped you figure out where you actually stand, do me a favour and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there.